Howdy folks, this is Tim Cowley. I'm just playing around with the Satori vision system. So what you can see here is we're taking color photographs from fashion magazines and we're having Satori display onto them and then see what her algorithm does with those. So you can see that she finds, if we switch to EGA or VGA, Satori tends to find interesting features of faces and then recolor them. So we can take a black and white photograph, and you can see here that there's a copy, there's copies being made here. This is a feedback effect after all, but it's stabilized, so the feedback is happening all in the same place. So we get this stability. Now we can relight with a flashlight. We can also take a laser. We can zoom it around, which is a lot of fun and amuses the cat. But what I find really interesting is that we can take a black and white picture and it'll find things like the blue tinge that if you're very, very, very careful you can find with very dark skin like this, and it tends to shine that way. But like, does this make any sense? It's a black and white photo. Oh, we can put lasers all over. That's a lot of fun. But we can also relight, so you can see that it's as if we're lighting it from different angles. Because the face is already lit. It already knows, the picture already knows like what angle the light was coming from and which parts of the face are darker, but I think it's really interesting that we can go in with this and relight so broadly. So let's move on to different pictures. I love this girl's eyes. Actually, eyes in general are just pretty cool, and mouths, because they tend to react. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that this is an effect that absolutely you can interact with as a real thing. So you can see that my hand, it'll find the edges on my hand and stabilize on them, and then start doing interesting things with my skin. So you can see that edge there where it sees the edge of my arm. Anyway, art's more interesting than... and you can see the face of this girl, if I bring this closer, tracking, and her eyes will sort of be left behind in the feedback effect and go away. So this is, rotation-independent algorithm. It's really working with the data, and what we're seeing really is from the actual data itself. So what else have we got for pictures? This one was a really neat one. I've forgotten the name of this artist, and I should just look it up. This is Daniel Martin. He's a painter working in the Netherlands. And he makes these awesome paintings that look like they're sort of half done. But he picks out the details he wants and just gets those. So we can relight her face with just a pen light. And you can see these shadows and things moving around. Now, let me just play with the effect a bit. Shrink it down. Something you find when you have like a couple of bright pictures next to a dark picture is that they will sort of send stuff in because it's feedback. So you get these things interacting in interesting ways. And you can talk about like a person and another person, and they're sort of interesting. Okay, so back to something simple, and I will show you how the whole device works. Oh, something else that helps a lot with this is having a light on a dimmer switch, because then you can come down to really dark things like this and see just these eyes pouring out the ink, as it were. And you can also add light and get the feedback effect to have more input basically from the from the subject. This one's tending towards purple, I think because the saturation is off. So what I'll do is I'll switch to EGA. Now, the thing is, I need to show this off. This whole gadget is just a little projector that's getting its signal from an Instagram filter app. And you can see here that the results on the actual paper, oh yeah, this one's not quite stable. There's some interesting sort of game of life feedback stuff going on with the dithering. But it's still following the contours. You can still see that her hand is, being faithfully recognized and colored, recolored. Now, what the actual device sees here, if we can just focus in on it, is a very limited version of what's going on. It's not, the camera is seeing the full color version of the picture, but then when it gets filtered and re-projected, it's just the CGA. So you can see this one's doing a pretty fast sort of loop. And I want to get it off of that because that's actually quite distracting. Here's EGA. EGA looks interesting. So like, what's going on here? What is even happening? If we change the feedback a bit, sort of zoom in, then we can see that it's just a feedback effect. It's just doing a copy of the, well, it's a feedback effect that interacts with the world. So we're doing copies, we're taking a picture. I'll start from the beginning. We take a picture and then get an idea of what it actually is. This is sort of how the mammalian eye works. So the projector has, the phone has its own brightness. It has a bit of an iris. It's got color vision, and then it gets interpreted down, or quantized down, to a very small number of colors. Okay, off you go. This is then re-projected out onto the subject. And so, essentially what's happening is that we're double-checking our work by comparing it to the actual thing. Now, when we relight something like skin or paper, it reacts. And now it looks different. So now when the camera gets an image, it's seeing this hand or picture lit. And so that goes back into the feedback loop, and we find new and interesting things. Now, it's not just EGA that we can play with. We've got edge detection algorithms, we've got comic art things. Let's go to the what I think is the simplest one to make an effect with, and here's the I forget the name of the artist, but you recognize this. This was used in the Democratic presidential campaign, this sort of crazy filter. But now you can, I mean, it's a fairly simple algorithm, so pretty much any app can do it really in real time, and you can see the effect sort of lagging behind her a bit because there is a frame delay. And the projector adds another one to it, but it's quite resilient, and we can put different sort of faces in there. Like, here's a face with a skin tone that matches the intended effect of the thing, and if we can just get the camera aligned right, it'll sort of work. Now, I want to point out this is very different from just a picture of the thing, because this is reacting to the presence of the actual subject, and you'll see that it actually takes a few frames to settle down. And then it sort of converges on a solution, it finds that, and then it stays there. And then of course we can mess with it by dodging the camera around a bit, and changing the direction of all this interesting feedback, exposing different parts of the face, and the really whatever the rest of the subject has. If anyone knows what Artyom Savyolov means, or whose name that is, please say so in the comments. So I'm just playing around with this, show the rotational independence, and a little bit of detail about where the feedback sort of goes. But that's it. That's the Satori system reacting to art and photography. One thing that makes it a little better is if I really get this focus very, very crisp. Let me just mess with my projector and nail it down. Because the blurring effect tends to give us sort of a nearest neighbor sampling to our algorithm, and we don't actually want that. What we want is really, really, really crisp lines. So there you go. Thanks for watching.